My series is actually Busamen Gachi Fighter, also known as Ugly Fighter, I believe, is the Uglymug Epic Fighter, I believe is the localized title for it, which is not great. But yeah, so this is Busamen Gachi Fighter. So this is an light novel original by Hiro Matsurio. This is, I believe, his first work, and it is drawn by Banpai Akira, who actually also drew for the new gate. So it did that. So that was the light novel original, became a manga adaptation, and then finally this anime adaptation. This anime adaptation, done to nobody's surprise, is White Fox. So White Fox is yet again in charge of producing an isekai series or like a high fantasy kind of power fantasy series. With the help of course, 5,000 subcontractors in tow, because as far as I know, White Fox is not production IG levels, right? They don't have a billion people in house, or like side games, they don't have a billion people in house. Uh, helped got hooked up with a bunch of subcontractors. They have handed the reins to Sona Toshiyuki as director. This is his first directorial debut, although he's had quite a decent amount of episode director work here and there. And this team, he's currently leading a team of mostly, I want to say, up and comers. Obviously, they have had some experience with, but these up and comers have quite some nice works on the resume. So, for instance, music is being done by Kasaka Ryo, who has done the music for the recent sort of FGO, the Absolute Defense Babylon, as well as like Black Butler and Cheer Eternity, this sort of stuff. So, a lot of these newcomers have pretty good stuff on their resume. And there are also some veterans in the wings for sport, such as Matsumoto Miki in charge of character design, Shitara Nozomi as director of photography, as well as Taniguchi Kumiko as director of special effects. So, interesting mix, but definitely a little bit more on the not greenhorn, but not so many prolific veterans this time around. So, yeah, the voice acting cast is actually quite the opposite, where it's mostly a veteran cast. For instance, you have Swabi Jinichi. Obviously, everybody should know that of who he is. Uchita Maya, as well as again other prolific veterans in Shiraishi Kento and Inagaki Konomi. But they have I would say overall not too surprising addition of this rising star, Fujidera Minori. Fujidera Minori, I believe just in this year, I want to say. I don't think it was last year, right? Himitsu no Apuri was also this year, I believe. But yeah, Fujidera Minori has done the main character Aozara Himari in Himitsu no Apuri, and I believe 1 or 2 seasons ago, one of the main characters in Haruyama Haru in Flower and Asura, or Hana to Asura. Um, Asura. So it's not too surprising that again, as this rising star, she's getting chucked into this role, but definitely a lot more veterans in this cast all around. Um, so before I go into the opening and ending and audio visuals of the story and all that, I do want to mention just one thing. So Sobi Jinichi is voicing Yoshioka Shigeru. So Yoshioka is the titular Uglymug, the ugly fat dude or the ugly guy who goes into isekai and becomes super super ugly, right, and fat and like whatever, right. And I want to say, yes, I know that Suave can do a more comedic voice. I know Suave can try doing a little bit more ugly voice, but he uses his very like standard regular voice when he's doing this character, and I want to say the voice does not match the character. You guys see the poster art, right? You guys have seen the poster art for this. I want to say, um, let me see if I can pull up something. But it's like, how do I say this? It's very um. Let me see if I can. But it's very it doesn't fit him. It doesn't fit the uh the character at all, because it's like it's too Slave's voice is ultimately just too much of an ikemen. You know what I mean? It's just it doesn't fit the body type. I understand. I understand why they put in the voice because what they wanted to do was they wanted to kind of emphasize this idea of like um they want to emphasize this idea of hey, this is the protagonist, he's actually nice inside, he's understanding and he's thoughtful, as opposed to how the world views him. He's ugly on the outside and he's just like a fatty who's just a fat dumb bozo or whatever, but he's actually really nice and thoughtful inside, right? But it's just it doesn't make the voice doesn't make sense with his body type, and ultimately the physical voice the voice is comes from the physical sort of body type you have, right? The body composition is not about the personality. So it really doesn't fit him. I would have liked near Dark Toast if you guys want to check out the clip I posted just to show you kind of the difference, right? But it's like I would have liked to have a little bit more of a gruff tone, maybe something again that fits that sort of like big, like fat so body type instead of this sort of like ikemen handsome tone. Maybe it would have been okay to have someone who can kind of do both of that like cool voice while also being able to provide the sort of like fat so comedy kind of voice, while also being on the older side.
Yeah,
I maybe
you
want to say
can say his name, Spire. He has a name. It's Sugita. Okay,
yeah, I was thinking of
and
Sugita,
he's
but I
already
also
doing
think
it
like
for Sakamoto days.
yeah. He's doing, but I think Sugita. I think that mainly fits. Like when Sugita's doing like the I'm a stupid bozo like kind of thing, he needs to be like way older. Like Sakamoto fits because he's like Sakamoto is like way older. You know what I mean? But I think for this, it might even be okay with like Tomokazu Seki. So Tomokazu Seki does a lot of or like shonen voices. He can do like Gilgamesh. He can do like more comedic, like mascot kind of voices as well. Maybe something like that, or maybe something like Yamadera Koichi. Yamadera Koichi does a lot of like like mascot voices as well, but he can also do voices like Genie in the Japanese version of dubbing of Aladdin. So maybe something like that where they can balance it out. But I just don't think that Suabe was a good fit for the voice, and it might be a hot take or not, but he does a little bit better when he has to like shout during scenes, like or whatever, and he brings that sort of like more guttural voice out, and he sounds like that. But like when he's just doing calm introspections, the voice just doesn't fit. And there's this like very funny part where, so in like episode 2 or something like that, the party, him and his party meet this like roguish pirate like character, right? He's also one of the like reincarnated kind of people, and he's like this roguish pirate like he's like handsome ikemen ike voice, right? But the issue is the main character, voiced by Gigi Suzume, has a more handsome voice than this roguish pirate character that's supposed to be handsome. And you're just listening to it here like, okay, like what are we supposed to take away from this, right? Like there's no contrast here because Swami is like out handsoming this like roguish pirate character. So I think it was a little bit of a miscast. I understand why they did it. I understand they wanted to set the contrast, but it's not a good cast. It's not a good casting. Um, so yeah, that aside, moving on to the opening and ending, I want to say the opening is so My Way. The song itself is My Way by Tempest. Tempest is a K-pop boy band. Japan has been leaning into incorporating a lot of these K-pop boy bands recently for one reason or another. I want to blame
Colonialism.
True.
no. I want to blame who was I keep forgetting. What is it? I want to blame Hiroyuki Sawano for this, for starting this. I'm
Yeah.
gonna blame Sawano for starting this because I know he did this shit for Gunja no Fanfare. He did this for that one esports anime or whatever, and he did this for a couple others. I'm blaming him for starting this trend, to be honest. But Hiroyuki Sawano's many flaws aside, So this is by K-pop boy band. The song itself is a very standard any song opening with male vocals, leans into a lot of more guitar, J-rock vibes a little bit. The animations of the opening are okay, but I want to say the storyboard is some of the most uninspired shit I've seen in my life. It's a very, very boring parade of like one character or another, just like showing their faces like from the shadows or like turning towards the screen and showing their faces. And it's just like, guys, like, come on, man, just like do something else. Like, yes, you do have to show the different characters, but please just find something more creative to do. And it's very uninspiring. The ending is Bansoko, or also known as Bandage, by Kanaka Mew. Kanaka Mew is one of those like idols, is a smaller scale idol. Um, I believe, or I forget if she came from the NH or the AKB's line of idols, but either way, this ending is even more standard anime song, and instead of even having animations, it's just a bunch of standard uninspiring stills of one of the female main characters, main heroes, and it's just very boring. Both the opening and the ending are extremely uninspiring and boring. The audio visuals, White Fox, they've done 50 million isekai high fantasy, power fantasy stuff. They know what to do by now. The animations and the battle stuff are okay. They are serviceable. They're not. They're nothing to like write home about and be like super impressed. But there are no, super like big flaws or anything like that, as far as I see.
How
I pretty much
ugly
all.
is he
Yeah,
on a scale of 1 to ugly? How ugly would you rate him?
him. I mean, I think they focus so what I will say is there are a lot of scenes where they focus on that like you see how that there's this like little mole on his mouth around his mouth here like near his chin, right? They focus on that a lot to like I want to say emphasize the fact that he's ugly, but I think like his design is actually kind of whatever. Like obviously they put in like the main features of like the whole like fat ugly bastard that trope that you see in places, but it's kind of like other than that, it's very standard design, and
So you're
his
saying
lips
he
are
looks
all.
like a regular dude?
He might look like a regular American dude, but I don't know. I don't know whether he's like or a regular dude necessarily. But it's like I think other than exhibiting the whole again the standard tropes of like fat ugly bastard, they didn't really do that much, and it's like it's very standard kind of design for that category of characters. And again, I'm not sure if I appreciate the fact that instead of just being like, yeah, he's ugly or whatever, and just being done with it, they again in a lot of scenes they keep focusing on the mole. Like they will literally zoom into the mole on his like chin, and it's like okay, like yes, I know the person is ugly. Like that's not a question. That's not in contention.
I
Like you
think
don't
he
need to
looks
emphasize like
I I think he looks like a regular Joe.
that.
I don't know where
I
you're getting
mean,
this.
I think they put a lot of the standard tropes and this sort of again category of characters into it.
Wow,
But
Spire, are you fat shaming now?
yes,
In the year
but
2025, when you're from
yeah,
Korea? How dare you?
yes, sir, lookism all day. But yeah, I think the animations are okay. Again, it's nothing to write home about. There's not too much like any like big flaws or anything like that. I would say um that yeah, there's nothing to really write home about. Um, if yeah, the 3D blending was okay. A lot of it was 3D was kind of limited to more of the like stuff like the status screens and the effects and stuff like that, which is good, which is fine. But yeah, nothing really inspiring. Audio visuals again, also not. I mean, or rather, BGM also very nondescript. The story. So the basic story premise is that there's this dude. He was ugly in Japan, and but he was okay with that until he got into an incident where he was essentially persecuted, falsely for because he was ugly, and now he ended up with PTSD or trauma from that, and he later kind of just decided to move on to an isekai, but uh, in the process of moving on to an isekai he made it so that while his kind of weaknesses, his weak points would be like, hey, I'm super ugly, and whenever I touch girls, I get hurt, and if I have sex with a girl, I will die. Um, in exchange for that, he got like a trillion points, like 100, like 10 trillion points, or however many trillion points, uh, into his other ability points. So he has like a trillion points of strength and dexterity and like all this constitution and all this other abilities, but again, in exchange, he's super ugly, he cannot touch girls, and if he has sex with a girl, he will die. That's sort of his thing. He meets up with a bunch of other reincarnated players. He talks to them, susses them out. He journeys with them throughout the land, and he meets up with, obviously, while doing a bunch of like dungeon crawling and status screen and battling and stuff like that. He also chances upon other reincarnated players, isekai players, and he uncovers more facts about his the party members he's traveling with. So, um, as for my opinion on it, I do a I did like the initial premise and the story buildup of the main character of this isekai more than a lot of other isekais. Like, it's not just like, oh man, I'm a neat and this life sucks, so I jumped in front of a truck or whatever it is, or like I died of overwork or whatever. Um, it's There was like a little bit of a better build up, obviously similar to something like Lookism, the web manga or whatever, where it's like, man, I was doing okay, but then they all like persecuted me and it sucked, and like why is that, blah blah. I like that build up, but I was a little disappointed on how they more or less dropped the main character's main problems like right after he got into an isekai, and I was just like, oh yeah, like he's ugly, but whatever, man. It kind of ended up being like that. Overall, the structure of the story, the balance in terms of screen time, it's half the time it's a very standard power fantasy plus status screens plus dungeon crawling plus comedy. There's a lot of comedic stuff. Most of the stuff that's not like introspection or talking with the reincarnated players is pretty much all like comedy, battle, whatever, high power fantasy kind of stuff. That's half the time. The other half is this sort of general, I want to say somewhat connected series of sequences of events where they keep introducing and uh, doing expositions for various people that have been reincarnated into this isekai, and the reincarnated people all have their own, kind of tortured backgrounds, just stuff that was unpleasant when they were living in Japan or on Earth or whatever. And the story kind of goes through that, and obviously how um, the Yoshioka, the ugly dude, and his party kind of deals with that, as well as the details on who his Yoshika's party members were in their previous lives and how that affects them now and how they're going to keep going forward in this isekai. So that's the other half. Um, Again, I kind of thought that the ugly part of the main character would the the story will linger a little bit more on that instead of just trotting it out for comedy. So I was a little bit disappointed. Um, Overall, with this other half of like the retrospection, introspection, there is some of that. There's some of the whole like, oh man, this is a cruel world, but even so, I want to try being nice one more time. There's that sort of like, light light puff of moral themes, I want to say, and some light, again, the background connections with the different characters. But I want to say the way that these are constructed, it's pretty much almost an afterthought, and none of these are very deep, well thought out, or any deep dives trying to analyze anything emotionally or psychologically or morally or ethically or anything like that. It's just very much like, oh man, it's a cruel world, but we gotta keep trying, or whatever it is. Like, we gotta be nice, blah blah blah, stuff like that. And it's I want to say it's a very green eggs and ham kind of situation. It's very sophomoric situation. Um, I do want to say that the concept, though, like of the story bringing in a lot of these reincarnated isekai people and them like consciously being like, "Oh, I am a reincarnated person and I had this history, and fuck you because let go of me because I have this history and I'm gonna do my shit." And the main character knowing that they are reincarnated and having to deal with that business and the other reincarnated isekai people's histories. I do think that aspect, the concept of it, and how that integrated into the storyline was interesting, and it added a decent amount of value. But again, when the author started going into sort of the analysis of like, okay, like you had a shitty life, so what? This next level of like, so what, and how those reincarnated isekai characters acted and how the conflict gets resolved, the emotional conflict, the emotional kind of problem gets resolved, is a very surface level kind of thing. And I wasn't very impressed with how the author treated it. So a little bit disappointing, I think. But I do like the concept of it quite a lot. And I think it would have been, if that had been expanded properly, I would have given this series so many more points, like so many more points, because it would have been a very successful variant of the Isekai series, I think. Overall, I think in terms of just like its place, the placement of Busamen, Gachi Fighter, within the general environment, the community of Isekai series, I think that most of what it presents is relatively innocuous, as long as you're okay with general Isekai stuff. It is a power fantasy, but it's not offense, almost like so. It is power fantasy. It is on the nose, but it's not offensive in terms of like I want to say rude is an adjective I want to use. Like how what is it, Remonster was, where I'm not obviously like the whole like I'm gonna have like sex with a woman. The women are all my play toys, like they are my women now, kind of thing. Was obviously not good, but it's more than that. It's Remonster was very much. It's not just the idea of that, but it's the way that it kind of was just like, yeah, bro, I'm just gonna go out, I'm gonna eat things, I'm just gonna become stronger, and then all the women are my things. And it's like the way it kind of just like paste that and like put it in front of your face, like or put it as like like a dish in front of you, like yeah, this is what you're gonna like. You're just gonna like the main guy's going around like having sexing up all the women, bro, and it's like it's like so I find that sort of series to be quite rude. Is how I would put it charitably, right? And compared to that, although it is a low hurdle, this series is much more innocuous. Again, although it is a power fantasy, yes, and it is an obvious power fantasy, but I do find it a little bit more innocuous. So I would say overall, it is a little bit mildly disappointing. Um, but it is not criminal. So I do want to give it probably a 4, or maybe if I was optimistic, a 4.5 out of 5. Or sorry, 4.5 out of 10, excuse me, 4 or 4.5 out of 10. And I would say most of the value of this variant of isekai comes from again the other dealing the party and the main character dealing with the other reincarnated people and their problems and stuff like that. If it didn't have that part, honestly, I would give this easily a 3. And if this part was better, I would have easily given it like a 6 or even a 7. But I think the author unfortunately didn't do much with it. That really impressed me. So it is what it is. I had to give it a 4. So, but yeah, again a little bit disappointed. I was expecting a quite decent amount from Busamen Gachi Fighter just because of the initial kind of variant that it showed, the promise it showed in its premise. But I think the author was just not up to the task of making it as good of a series as it could have been. So yeah, again,
You
if you
mentioned
are,
you mentioned
yeah,
this was the same author as the New Gate.
no, the artist, it's just the artist is
Okay,
the
never
same
mind then.
artist who drew for the New Gate. Yeah.
Because the
Um,
New Gate's better. Just saying.
Yeah. If it was like the artist that made the new game and then he made this, I would have been I would have been more disappointed, I think. But yeah. Unfortunate again. But I think if you,
what's his
yeah,
power scaling, Spire? What would you
what's his
power
power?
scale him?
What do you mean? What do you mean power?
To
Scaling.
other isekai protagonists?
I mean, the issue is it's like all so many of the other isekai protagonists are all always like the numbers don't mean anything to these people, right? It's like they have numbers on their status screen, but it's always like, yeah, you can pretty much do anything with this like rake that you have for your soul life or whatever it is. But it's like um, if that was like unironically compared, like this guy's literal title is like Almighty God because all of his status points are like 1 trillion in each thing, right? So he'd probably beat up all of them. He'd probably get the bag, but
So you're
you
saying he's the
know,
strongest isekai protagonist?
he's one of the stronger ones to be sure. Because again, he has a trillion ability points and everything. So, but
I don't know.
yeah,
I don't think he can beat the strongest isekai protagonist.
who
Huh? You forgot
who
who?
is that? No, who is that? Toast?
There we go. The instant death good. That I believe the
Oh
instant death good
yeah.
is. I
But yeah,
believe.
this is what I'm talking about, right? It's like all of these other isekai protagonists have like stupid ass like there's no point in doing power scaling for these guys. It's just like,
I
oh
yeah.
yeah, I have the best fucking like sooner or later we're gonna have some person that's like I make the best miso soup in the isekai. And it's like this miso soup that can heal all your friends and poison all your enemies, and he's gonna be super like almighty, like powerful too. It's just like there's no point in making these
I still
comparisons because
firmly
all these
believe that
yeah.
Yogiri Takuto is probably the strongest isekai protagonist currently. I don't know if there's anyone stronger than him right now.
But yeah, that's
Can
pretty
he
much
beat Subaru from ReZero? I firmly believe he can.
yeah. I mean, Suru is like his power is very relatively inconsistent. So, but yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I have to say about Busamen Gachi Fighter. Again, if you really need another, just like a very average to below average isekai to watch, I'll maybe check this out. Again, it's not terrible. It's not the worst thing, but it is a little bit disappointing. You definitely expect a little bit more from a premise like this, but again, the author unfortunately did not deliver. So.